I am. Emma, are we on mute?
Yes.
We're getting an echo.
Go.
Okay, I think we're good now. That's what we have.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. It's 2 p.m. in Conference Room 325 at the State Capitol. We're here to have a joint informational briefing for the House Committees on Water, Land, House Committee on Agriculture, and House Committee on Judiciary and Hawaiian Affairs. I am joined today by Chair Tarnas, Chair Gates, and members of all three committees to receive an update from the Department of Land and Natural Resources, Department of Agriculture, and the Hawaii Cattlemen's Council on the status of implementation of Act 90. So thank you very much for all being here. We will do the presentations first, members, and then we'll take questions at the end. Okay, so go ahead and start us off, Chair Chang and Chair Hurd.
Good afternoon, chairs, vice chairs, members of the committees. My name is Sharon Hurd, Chairperson, Department of Agriculture. Thank you for this opportunity to update everybody on Act 90.
Aloha mai kako, Don Chang, Chair of the Board of Land and Natural Resources. I also have with me today Emma Ewan from the Division of Forestry and Wildlife, and from the Land Division, Russell Suji, Kevin Moore, and Ian Hirokawa. I too am very grateful for the opportunity to provide you an update on the collaboration between DOA and DLNR on the implementation of Act 90. So we are going to do a joint presentation. This is our first run through it, so bear with us as we try to do this collaboratively. Please do not evaluate the implementation of Act 90 on what may be on our presentation. So, okay, so yes. So I'll take this first slide. Okay. So Act 90. I'm going to say a little bit about. It is the intent. Well, let me start off first with our mission. Let me tell you what DLNR's mission is, and I'll give Chair Hurd an opportunity to tell you her mission, as those missions are critical to how we implement Act 90. Article 11 of the Constitution provides that the state and all of its political subdivisions shall conserve and protect Hawaii's natural beauty and all natural resources, including land, water, air, minerals, and energy sources, and shall promote the development and utilization of these resources in a manner consistent with their conservation and in furtherance of self-sufficiency of the state. All public natural resources are held in trust by the state for the benefit of its people. DLNR's mission to preserve and protect natural and cultural resources for this generation and the generations to come. It is this mission that we bring to the implementation of Act 90. I'd like to provide Chair Hurd the opportunity to provide her constitutional mandate and her mission.
All right. The Department of Agriculture is also under Article 11. Our section is Section 3, and the content is basically the same as what you have the content for Section 1, which is the Department of Agriculture shall conserve and protect agricultural lands, preserving them for food production. I think the reason Act 90 is so important is because they're not competing missions. It says preserve and protect, mine is conserve and protect, but they're different entities. Yours is natural resources, the Department of Agriculture is agricultural land. So that's we're here today to give you an update on where we stand on that.
So with those two mission statements, in 2003, the legislature enacted Act 90. And the act was created to establish a process to transfer non-agricultural park lands under management of DLNR to DOA, subject to the mutual agreement of BLNR and BOA and the approval of the governor. But our missions help to dictate the implementation of Act 90. Act 90 was designed, as I said, mutual agreement between DLNR. How do we preserve our respective missions? So, Act 90 is really a unique opportunity for both of us to support our missions, but also transfer these lands, some of these lands that are appropriate to DLNR. I did want to provide a little bit of foundation for the Act 90 on what we did to implement that. So initially, DLNR inventoried all of our non-ag parklands, and we identified their status on each land, whether they were leased, whether they're ceded lands, 5B, and the type of disposition, public auction or negotiation, the total acreage. Land Division then conferred with other DLNR divisions, including DOFAL, OCCL, DAR, and state parks, whether there was an agreement or objection to transfer these non-ag parklands to DOA. And if there was no objection for the basis of, then we would transfer these lands. And so those non-ag park leases that DLNR agreed to transfer was then submitted to DOA for consideration. DOA conducted due diligence on the appropriateness of the lands for sustainable ag uses and identified those lands that they agreed should be transferred. DOA did not accept all of the leases where there were delinquencies, litigations, and unsuitable for ag purposes. So those lands that DLNR and DOA agreed to should be transfers. They were submitted to the Board of Ag for approval, then submitted for the Board of Land and Natural Resources for the transfer, and then executive orders were prepared. So that sort of lays the background of the transfers. And to a large extent, DLNR participated, we transferred, and I think I have the next slide, the dispositions. So this was the intent, and in up until 2001, DLNR had been transferring lands, but there was a concern raised that DLNR was not transferring large pasture leases. So in 2021, the legislature passed Act 139, which established an Act 90 working group composed of legislative representatives. And pursuant to Act 90, the working group's final report stated that certain ag lands under DLNR have multiple management objectives, which can include ag production, forestry, native forest restoration, watershed protection, habitat conservation, public recreation, fuel fire suppression, and other public purposes, which clearly fall under DLNR's purview and mission. These multiple land uses should remain under DLNR's management. Act 90 Working Group maintained the requirement of mutual consent under DLNR and DOA.
The working group also found that lands under DLNR used for the primary and substantial management objective of agricultural production should be transferred to DOA. May I?
Yes,
Point of
please,
clarification.
go ahead, please.
The Act 90, back in 2003, identified lands that had the potential for agriculture production, including agriculture as well as non-ag park lands, which would be pasture lands. Previous to 2023, the lands that were identified as agriculture production were transferred. They were fully transferred at that time. Well, we didn't take the lands that had gulches or had violations on the land, but we did accept those parcels. Since 2003, in 2003, we started the first transfers of non-agricultural parklands, which are pasture lands. That was a big shift for the Act 90. It was the first transfer of non-agricultural parklands. But previous to that, and thank you to DLNR for putting together a list of all lands that had agricultural leases. And we transferred the ones with agriculture. And then we worked on the non-agricultural park leases. And that's where we are now.
Right.
Okay.
So let me go on to the next slide. So the proposed land dispositions, when we originally started this back in 2003, over 250 leases were identified, including revocable permits. And so we began the transfer. And as Sharon said, as we got up to the present date, 2003 last year, there was Senate Bill 77. And it was introduced to remove the requirement of mutual consent. And quite frankly, with the urging of many of you that are sitting here, including many of the senators, and the governor's new administration, and the governor's directive for both Chair Hurd and I to collaborate and try to complete the implementation of Act 90. There are many of you who encouraged me to visit the large pasture leases. So I visited with Chair Hurd, KK Ranch, Jerry and Jason Moniz, Kapapala, Lonnie and Bill Petrie, and saw firsthand their stewardship of the land. Commitment both to ag and forest use, and I agreed that DLNR, as a director, that we should make a recommendation that the board transfer these 2 pasture leases, and the board approved the transfer. So, with that.
Okay, let me take this slide.
Yep.
This infographic depicts the total lands that were involved with Act 90. In the green, you have the legacy, we call them legacy parcels, that were transferred prior to 2003. Those are mainly agriculture parcels. The purple represents the sector that DLNR chooses, or at this time is thinking of retaining. That's 92 parcels, a total of 50,000 acres. And the blue represents the collaboration that Director Chang is referring to, where those parcels have been approved by the Board of Agriculture to DLNR. It's a total of 103 parcels, 43,000 acres, and pending now the BLNR board taking it up in their agenda and considering approval. Once they're approved, or not approved, but once they're approved, assuming that, then it goes to EO, right? And then there's a little sliver there that represents the 3 non-ag park parcels that have already been transferred, representing KK Ranch.
And Chair Hurd is much better with infographics. I'm kind of like, tell me what are the actual numbers. So I just want to briefly, so let me move on to, so this is a map that shows all the ag leases. So from 2005 to 2022, we call them the Phase 1 transfers, where BOA and BLNR mutually agreed to transfer, and the EOs have principally transferred the management from DLNR to DOA. From 2005 to 2023, on the islands of Oahu, we transferred 76 leases for 1,589 acres. On the island of Kauai, we transferred 39 leases for 435 acres. On the island of Maui, 13 leases for 1,317 acres. And on the island of Hawaii, 86 leases for 20,917 acres. The largest parcel yet to be transferred is Kapapala, 24,767 acres. And that lease has been approved by the board, or conceptually approved by the board, now approved by the Board of Agriculture, and the EO has yet to be prepared. And once the EO is prepared, then we will transfer that. That lease will also go over. So as Chair Hurd said, that the progress in 2023 under this new administration and this collaboration, we did update our inventory of leases, shared that with DOA, and DOA completed their due diligence, and that transferred approximately 21,672 acres. So at the end of 2024, this year, we anticipate transferring a total of 275 leases and a total of 70,696 acres. And what Chair Hurd referred to, the 50,000 acres, those are what we would call the Phase 3. Those are the non-ag park lease lands that DLNR does not agree to transfer, as it has multiple use, including forestry, native forest restoration, watershed protection, habitat conservation, public trail access. But we are working collaboratively with Department of Ag on taking all those additional parcels, and if there's an opportunity for us to further engage in transferring portions of it that may be more appropriate to go to Department of Ag, we would work with them collaboratively to do that.
And that is precisely what the process was for Cabapala Ranch. The entire parcel was not transferred over to DOA for management. There was a carve-out of areas within the Cabapala Ranch parcels that DLNR chose to retain, and the Cabapala Ranch tenants agreed to that. So that's why there's a delay, because now they have to survey and carve it out. We've done our surveys, but now they have to do their due diligence and carve off that sector, which we're hoping they can do for the other parcels they wish to retain. What we're asking is that they look at those lands carefully, identify those that have in current ag production. In fact, all the leases that are in the retained sector, the purple sector, they all have current ag leases. So we're asking, the collaboration is that we're asking them to take a look, just like they did for Cabapala, carve off those sections that they deem to be natural resource rich, and, then we'll be able to resurvey and then keep those lands that are in current ag production in ag production. Earlier, you've heard the Department of Agriculture say, we have land. We just have to keep that land in production, increase production. What we lack is production. So that's kind of like where we are now.
Okay, go ahead. So I think I just went over the phases. Maybe Sharon, if you want to share anything more on
Oh,
this.
yeah. The reason for the picturesque, besides being beautiful flowers, is these are the types of crops that we hope to increase production of. It's not food, but it's certainly revenue for the farmers. And our vision now is generational economic profitability for agriculture. And those generations can start now. If we can give parcels of land to people now, they can start their generational economic profitability. So the bottom slide is one that those on the Big Island are very familiar with. That's the floor of Greenpoint Nursery. They grow anthuriums. The top is Maui floral. So we're hoping that some of the lands that are transferred over will open up to new farmers to want to pursue whatever their hearts desire. Not necessarily food, but yes, food.
So I did explain the process, and these are your capacity needs.
Right. Thank you to the legislature last year for the substantial amount for funding our surveys, which was a big rock that we had to move out of the way in order to move forward with our Act 90 transfers. But now we have the funding and more so the appraisals and 2 positions. So we're moving forward. We're ready to do that. So the capacity is now we need additional funding for staff to review and process transfers. And we are setting them up in the Hilo office on Lanikala. Thank you, Don, for that.
Yep. And I guess both of us wanted to share with you some examples of, in this case, these are lands that we would like to keep. This is a picture of a Kohala, where we are partnering with Parker Ranch to reforest some stream corridors. Multiple groups have been also working with us, volunteering to replant the forest there. But this is an example of the Act 90 lands that DLNR would like to retain.
These are some of the lands that Department of Agriculture would like to move into. This is a picture of Sugarland Farms. But look at how much food they're producing on the land they have. These are cabbages. Yeah, Sugarland Farms provides most of the cabbages for the state. We want to reproduce this model on ag lands now and become more food.
Of the kind of lands that DLNR would like to keep that's on the list. It's in, I think it's Kahakuloa on Maui. It is, this terrain is steep, not suitable for ag, but it has nesting birds and endangered species. So we are partnering with ranchers on a win-win to fence the area to protect those endangered species.
Okay, and I want you to please take a look at the ranch lands, see how well managed they are, see the the terrain is smooth, and when you have ranch lands that are well-managed, you have low risk for fire. The ranchers do a great job. They're award-winning stewards of the land. And the ranch lands like this should remain in food production. They currently have leases. They should remain to look like this.
I think we've got 1 minute. I think it's two.
Oy,
So-
sorry.
So we tried to use our time wisely. But Chair Hurd and I have made a commitment to implement Act 90 under the intent of the law, which was to create that there would be mutual agreement on lands that would benefit our respective missions. So we continue to do that. I've appreciated the collaboration and the support of the legislature as well in not, in holding in abeyance Senate Bill 77 to give us the opportunity to work together. So with that being said, that's our presentation, and we are both available for questions as well as we have staff that's here.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
very
Appreciate it.
Oh, my.
Now we'll have Nicole Galassi, Hawaii Cattlemen's Council. So just need to share your screen on the Zoom. Yeah.
Share there. Okay. Aloha, my name is Nicole Galassi. I'm the Managing Director for the Hawaii Cattlemen's Council. Chair Tarnish, Chair Ichiyama, Chair Gates, thank you for holding this briefing, but mostly thank you for giving us time to present. I want to thank Chairs Chang and Chair Hurd and their staff for the work that they have done to get a lot of these done. It's true, this is the most progress that we've seen in decades, but I am here to say that we are not done yet. There are still leases that, there are still leases that are in agriculture that need to transfer to Department of Ag. Chair Chang and Chair Hurd talked about their different phases. I kind of put them into buckets here. There are leases that both DLNR and DOA agree to. We really want to encourage them to continue actively working on that because one of those leases, Kapapala, they're still waiting for their EO to officially transfer after the surveys. There's about 99 leases, I believe, that were approved by BOA, still need approval by BLNR. I just want to share that the clock is ticking. A lot of these leases have terms that are ending in the next couple of years, the next handful of years. So I don't want the first step to be the applause that we give, but it's the end step when they are at DOA with the appropriate lease that they have. But we are here to turn your attention to the leases that DLNR is seeking to retain. Our goal, as we've said so many times, is keeping agricultural lands and ag production. To do this, the Act 90 Working Group found that lands under DLNR used for the primary and substantial management objective of ag production should transfer to DOA. We appreciate this finding because it really gets to the heart of what Act 90 was for, to protect these lands and ag production. And it also really urges the two boards not to use mutual agreement as a way to just blockade a legitimate ag and food production entity from transferring to DOA where it can get the lease terms that it needs. So in September 2023, HCC requested 17 leases and revocable permits to be considered for transfer to DOA. Chair Hurd said she was ready and willing to accept these leases, and that's because these are in active agriculture. Unfortunately, earlier this month, I received a letter from Chair Chang. She said that these leases were reviewed and deemed most appropriate for DLNR for watershed, endangered species habitat, hunting, and hiking access. We were told that leaseholders should contact DLNR to find plans to suit the ranchers' needs. So I really do appreciate that DLNR and DOA, the most effective way to look at leases and see what's what is to look at an Excel sheet. But I've talked to these leaseholders. People in the community know them. They've known them for generations on these lands. Just like Chair Chang visited KK and Kapapala Ranch, if you were to step foot on these lands, there would be no doubt in your mind that these lands should be with the Department of Agriculture. I did speak with some of these leaseholders, and there are some who are willing to work with DLNR. So our short list is actually a shorter list of 11 leases and revocable permits. The parcels total about 23,129 acres, but that's just a number. What I'm really here to tell you about is the actual management that's being done on these lands. These are real people, real families. And so I want to take it away from this number and these lease numbers and show you what's happening on the land. Starting on Kauai. The Robinsons manage several herds on both their land and state revocable permits. They use rotational grazing to ensure healthy soils and adequate forage is available. But the pressure of a revocable permit hinders them from making long-term improvements like irrigation, which they would otherwise do. Lincoln Ching runs his cattle on a rotational grazing system as well. He's done invasive species removal on the land. He's worried that his revocable permits could be pulled and converted to other uses because he's right next to Kapa'a, where storefronts and homes could bring in higher income than ag. But he provides, on average, 36,000 pounds of local beef annually. This is exactly the type of lease that Act 90 was meant to protect, to keep it in ag. On Maui, Mr. Balthazar's Kaupo lease produces over 6,000 pounds of ground beef in addition to 300 weaned cattle each year. He was given an award for outstanding NRCS participant implementing conservation practices. As a side note, during the Maui fires, Mr. Balthazar donated his water trucks and personnel to help with the fires in Kula, and in the aftermath, he donated his trucking services to get feed to livestock, even when he himself had pastures burned and losses experienced. That takes me to Hawaii Island. On Hawaii Island, Stephen DeLuz is a second-generation rancher and works on the land with his son, grandsons, and now great-grandson. He produces 90,500 pounds of beef for Hawaii each year. His ranch has 10 reservoirs and 5 million gallons of water in reserve. These are all projects that he's worked on with his family. While DLNR's letter encouraged me to get these leaseholders to work with DLNR to find, shared visions, Mr. DeLuz is one who is extra skeptical, and rightfully so. When he tried to work with DLNR with his cattle that he grazed at Pu'uwawa, he had to pull out because it became untenable both for the health of his animals and his business. So he was forced out due to unworkable terms. He would really like to be transferred to DOA so he can keep working in agriculture. Oop, too far. The Botellos started ranching on this general lease here 3 generations ago with Edward Sr., then Wayne, and now Whitney, who has come to visit with some of you at Cattlemen at the Capitol. They worked with NRCS on their EQIP program to improve water infrastructure. They have 2.8 million gallons in their reservoir and install cross fences for rotational grazing. They operate a cow-calf operation, but they also raise dairy heifers. So those are some stories and a few photos from these leaseholders who are bona fide ranchers, stewarding the land, producing beef for the community. But I want to give Charles Stevens of SC Ranch a chance to tell you what he does for himself. He took time to fly over from the Big Island because this is so important to him. He has a lot to lose, and he wants to share a little bit of his story.
Hello, everyone. Please bear with me. I'm a little nervous. It's out of my zone. My name is Charles Stevens. I'm a Gila boy, graduated from Gila High School, raised by a single mom. My dad passed when I was 4. My 2 sisters are 6 and 9. I'm here today as the owner of SC Ranch. I purchased the ranch from Carrie Schumann, the widow of Doug Schumann, in 2011. I run the ranch alongside my wife, two children, and 1 full-time employee. The ranch is about 7,700 acres, and it's located in the Puiliamauka, district of Hamakua on the Big Island. We run about 900 cow-calf operation, and we run 650 grass finish, all natural. I'm proud to state that we are 100% local, and we are food from Hawaii for Hawaii. And we sell all of our beef to the Kama'aina beef. Since purchasing the ranch, my wife and I have made over $1 million improvements by installing a 1 million gallon reservoir with a 1.5 acre catchment, which with 1 inch of rain collects 54,000 gallons of water. We've done 10 miles of perimeter fencing and new pipelines. I support the purpose and intent of the Act 90. Non-agricultural parks lands rightfully belong under the management of the Department of Ag because they understand everything about the industry, our industry. I recently learned that GL 4477 is on a list of 17 leases that the DLNR has no intention of transferring. Even though I have an impeccable record of compliance, stewardship, and payment history, I'm here because I want you to meet me, and I am not a number GL 4477. I'm a local land stewardship partner. Since purchasing the ranch, I have dedicated my life to producing quality grass-fed beef for my community, and I want to continue to provide food from Hawaii for Hawaii. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stevens.
So I just wanted to give him a chance to speak because he took the time to fly over, and you can see that he'll probably invite you onto his ranch, actually. But the thing is that, you know, there's so much time. You guys have so much to do. We would love for there to be more trust in that these ranchers are actually doing food production on the land. We'd love to continue to give you examples of that. They've seen that KK Ranch was approved for transfer. Since then, Jason and Jerry have put in, they've put in more investment into equipment to continue the invasive species work that they're doing. They have plans to apply for NRCS funding to increase their grass finishing capacity and keep beef here more locally. They've also shifted the sale of their wean cattle from the export market to Hawaii's Sustainable Beefs program locally. And they're planning to apply for the second phase of the Climate Smart Commodities Grant, which HCC is going to be offering soon. They're planning to construct a new reservoir. That's a lot of commitment. That's because they were able to make these commitments because the transfer has given them the security and the confidence to quickly move forward with these programs. They know that they'll be able to continue in ag under this lease with DOA. So our questions to DLNR, because it would be beneficial for all of these leases to have this confidence to plan for long-term improvements. Our questions are, why is DLNR retaining these specific leases, which are primarily in agriculture? We do believe that they can get the work done in conservation, but actually do it better under DOA because they'll have more security in their lease. Another question is, since the beginning of the leases, a lot of these were started in 1976, has any work been done on these parcels to address what they've said that they want to keep them for, the endangered species, the hunting, and the access? And lastly, if they must remain under DLNR, will these leases remain in agriculture at the end of their lease term? Because that is the reason for Act 90. It's to keep these leases in agricultural production. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Galase. I appreciate your presentation. I'll take questions from members, and maybe we'll have Chair Hurd and Chair Chang come back up to the table. If you want to just grab one of those chairs right over there, and then we can, yeah. Members' questions? Yeah, Chair Tarnas?
Thanks very much for your presentations today. And I appreciate the hard work you're doing to try to collaborate to meet the needs of Act 90. It does call for mutual agreement, which I know has been a challenge. You don't always have mutual agreement. But in your work that you've done so far, what have you found lacking in terms of your own capacity, in terms of involvement of stakeholders? Do you need the legislature to take action to help you do your job in fully implementing Act 90? Both chairs.
Thank you, Representative Tarnas. It's, without disparaging any state employee at any time, at any point, I can only laud the Department of Agriculture staff. The Ag Resource Management team, after the end of the, after the last ledge session, they really went to work. I mean, it was all steam, full steam ahead, all hands on deck. And they did their due diligence on all the parcels that I'm going to refer to them in the blue section, those parcels that DLNR agreed potentially to transfer. They did all that work. So yeah, if we had more staff, maybe they could have done some of the other stuff that they're tasked to do as well. But it was full steam ahead on Act 90. And so what do we need from the legislature? Perhaps funding for appraisals, for speedier renewals, speedier leases, appraisals. The appraisals that DLNR has done and will do are based on a different metric. Our appraisals are based on agricultural production potential. We don't do recreation, we don't do hunting, we don't do anything other than what is the potential for, what is your plan for ag production, and then we base our appraisals on that. So it's a different system. So we both, I would say, well, I'll speak for the department, we would like some help with appraisals. Surveyors, you could certainly develop a lot more surveyors for the state. They're in short supply. And I would say that, just to laud the staff, they did it in record time, that we were able to put these leases up to the board in October. The board passed them, and now the ball's in, DLNR's court, and I'm not sure what kind of resources they need, but I know that it takes a lot of manpower to do what we did. It takes a lot.
Thank you. Chair Chang.
Thank you. Let me just add to that. Let me give you an example. So KK Ranch, so we did carve out from the leased area approximately 7,000 acres out of the, Kapapala Ranch. I apologize, Kapapala Ranch. So 7,000 acres that we wanted to reserve out of the probably total of about 31,000. And it's next to a canoe corridor, so we wanted to keep that. That survey is going to cost us $27,000. And it's a huge swath of land, so it's just time. So that's what's holding us up on specific on Kapapala. We have all the intentions to transfer that. We were hoping that perhaps we could have done that through a right of entry transfer, but DOA needs they need the full executive order to transfer. So one is the cost of the surveys. Some of the lands that we are looking at that DOA board has approved, we have made a determination that we're willing to transfer those leases. However, in some instances, we want to reserve out an easement for access to forests, or let's say an Alahele trail. So in those cases, we're going to have to also do a survey, and then we're going to have to prepare those documents. So those are the kinds of challenges that we have that will delay the ultimate preparation of the executive order. But our intention is to transfer. What help do we need from the legislature? If we had the same authority as DOA to negotiate, currently we have to put out to public auction. We do have a bill this year that it is to amend 171 that would permit us to negotiate. I suspect not all of the existing lessees would want DLNR to be the landlord. They may want to be transferred to DLNR, to DOA. But there may be some instances, if we're able to negotiate better terms like the ones that DOA have, they may be willing to stay with us. It is not our intention on the parcels that we intend to keep, or that we don't have mutual agreement to transfer. Our intention is not to terminate anybody's lease now. It is at the expiration of their lease to take the land back because we have determined that they serve multiple use and there is a benefit for either watershed protection, fire suppression, or critical habitat. So in those cases, we would like to retain it. But as we also discussed, as Chair Hurd had mentioned, there may be opportunities in some of these parcels, and I appreciated the presentation by Nicole, clearly identifying some of those that are on their short list, that they are doing good stewardship, they are doing ag production. There may be an opportunity for us to fashion a similar approach that what we did with Kapapala. Can we carve out some of those lands that we'd like to put into forestry or watershed protection, carve that out of the lease area, and then transfer the remainder to DOA? We are still looking at all of the lists that the Hawaii Cattlemen's Association provided to us. But the immediate ask for the ledge is to give us the same authority to negotiate for these ag leases. That would be something on our short list.
Thank you. I'll ask questions later, but others can have the opportunity.
Are there other questions? Side.
Kirsten is
Oh,
asking.
sorry, I can't see you. Vice Chair Kahaloa.
Quick question for DLNR. Chair Chang, can you talk about what percentage of DLNR lands in your total portfolio are conservation? How much acreage? And then of these 17 agricultural parcels that are under discussion, what percentage of that total is that?
I don't have very specifics, but what I can share with you, we manage about 1.3 million acres of lands, and a mass majority of that is forest lands. So I think the lands that we'd like to retain is approximately 50,000 acres. So it is probably a small percentage of the overall, but the lands that we are asking to retain they could be a critical habitat, as you saw one of the parcels, critical bird habitat, critical habitat for, are important for watershed protection. What we have realized with Red Hill and with the Maui fires is that our water resources are even more vulnerable. So watershed protection, ensuring that we have recharge, that we have water that's available for the future, that's really what we're trying to protect in our forest lands. So several of these large pasture leases adjoin our forest reserves. So that's the reason we'd like to keep them. Now, do we need to keep all of the hundreds of acres that may be under pasture? Maybe not. I don't know. We have to take a look like we did with Kapapala and KK. But they were not on the list that we mutually agreed to because they had other unique benefits or multiple uses that fulfilled our mission. So I don't have the specifics, but that's kind of what we're looking at. We take each one of these on a case by case. So we have tried to scrutinize and not just, and I will tell you, last year with Senate Bill 77, I took to heart what you all told us. If DLNR, you don't come to the table in good faith, we're going to take it away from you. We will decide, or DOA will decide. So I likewise told my staff, I need you to tell me not what you would like, but what do we really need that fulfills our mission? So that list of lands that we identified were those that we had determined were critical to DLNR, because we did revise our inventory to increase it, and then we submitted that to DOA. So, sorry for the long explanation, but that's what we are looking at.
Thank you.
Other questions, members? Chair Tarnas?
Thank you. Nicole, from your perspective, what has worked well in terms of how your members and stakeholders that you represent have been able to participate, and what should be done better in terms of how you can participate in this process that DLNR and DOA are doing?
Sure, I think what we're finding is that what really needs to happen is that our leaseholders have to get in front of all of you, get in front of these chairs, and invite them to the ranch. That's tough because not everybody has all that time to do that. I think they're willing to do that. Our list of folks that we're advocating for right now, especially after hearing what I'm hearing, that at the end of their lease that it's going to be taken away, that's really frightening to me, actually. I feel like that's the first time we're hearing that officially. And I think that they want to be able to show the good work that they're doing on the land, but do they have enough time for you guys to visit each of their leases? We hope that there's a way that we can efficiently and effectively prove that they are in agriculture. It seems like the in-person, in-face has been what's working, but there has to be a better, more effective way to get things done.
Rather than us being the ones that you're targeting, this is an executive branch responsibility. The legislature is being involved because stakeholders don't feel like the executive branch is carrying out their responsibility. So what do you think, you instead of having us go visit every
Oh, no,
place,
I meant the
you
chairs
need to
too.
get the DLNR staff and
Yeah.
DOA staff to do
Yeah,
that.
that's what I was
Okay.
looking at. Yeah, exactly. But that's still a lot of time. I know that they don't have a lot of time. I think that the invite is there to be able to prove that. I think what's not working is understanding why DLNR wants to keep these leases. Like the question that I have, where since the beginning of these leases, decades and decades ago, what work has been done for endangered species? If it's something way in the future, is there a legitimate plan for it? And is that reasonable enough? And do we know that there's going to be success in it enough so that we're going to take this land out of agriculture, which has been producing hundreds of thousands of pounds of beef? That we're just trying to find out what is it exactly that DLNR wants to do, and do they have a plan for it? Because can they do that somewhere else where agriculture isn't actively producing food and stewarding the land already? Yeah.
Thank you.
Members, any additional? Oh, yeah, Chair Hurd.
May I have a follow-up answer to Representative Tarnas, now that I've had a few minutes to think? Act 90 has really sparked a need within the departments, and that was brought about by the fact that Chair Chang said one of the reasons for Act 90 that they want to renegotiate the terms of their lease. Once their lease is done, they have to go to public auction, which is, going to be a big cost, or back into conservation. Thanks to Brian Miyamoto at Farm Bureau and Randy Cabral and Nicole, we found out that all of the state leases really should be revisited, because we had one lease at the Department of Agriculture to cover everything. And thanks to Brendan Baltazar, Diamond B, he refused to sign his lease. And we said, well, okay, let's talk about this. But when I looked at it, he was absolutely right. He has a ranch lease, and on his lease it says he can't have animal excrement on his property. It's like, this doesn't, it's a ranch. So thanks, as I said, we all got together, Brian and Randy and Nicole, and we hammered out a ranch lease, which now we need an agriculture park lease. And then now we need a joint, there should be more specific leases, and Director Chang and I have agreed we need to get together after and hammer out a lease that will be good for everybody, not pit DLNR against DOA. So yes, you will be seeing a bill or some sort of measure that allows us to renegotiate, maybe contract from outside specialists, work with some legal entity to come up with a template for a lease that's specific and fair. So thank you.
Any additional questions? Oh, yeah, Chair Gates?
No, Chair.
Oh, you have a question? No, go.
One follow-up question is just of some of the 17 parcels that are set to not be transferred, Chair Chang, is there an opportunity to think about other alternatives? Could we transfer and do rights of entry, MOU, add other clauses into the lease negotiations and contracts so that active conservation and ranching can still happen in concert? Because what I know of some of the ranches on this list on Hawaii Island is that they are actively doing conservation while stewarding the lands, while ranching. So most of the ranchers are doing that already, and I believe they'd be happy, rather than not have a lease, be able to do both and work with both divisions. So could we transfer, but put in clauses that include conservation? Have we thought a little bit more outside the box to still meet the objective of Act 90, but also support keeping Paniolo ranching, which is a cultural fabric of our communities, in ranching?
No, thank you for that. And yes, we have. So we do have some leases, for example, Mr. Baltazar on Maui, where we are transitioning. So, and that's really not an Act 90, but I do want to use that as an example where we have funds available to begin to start putting fences for invasive species. So as we're ready to get the fences up, we're moving down, but we're working with the ranch. So there's nothing, you're absolutely right. I think we can be, based upon what I heard Mr. Stevens and some of the others, I suspect that there is a transition. There's a way that we can work together with them on finding whether it's a phased approach, whether it's we may not have to use all the land, whether we're able to potentially renegotiate an alternative term. But I also appreciate that each one of these are very unique. They have their own circumstance. We have our own why they're special to DLNR. So I am optimistic that we can find a way to find a mutual agreement, to find a path forward that gives them some sense of security that they continue on. Because that was what I had heard from both KK and Kapapala. The uncertainty, it was extremely stressful. They can't put in an investment in the property. They have, there's no legacy. I totally get that. I totally understand that. And so I am, what we heard today, I'll take that back to the department. We will reassess. I make no guarantee that I can go and visit every single one of these 17 lease sites. But I think that there's a way that our staff, and for me, I'm always a process. If our staff can begin to have a relationship with these stewards, because they are going to outlive all the rest of us who are appointed. We will come and go. But that's the staff and the lessees, they will have a relationship. And the more they begin to understand each other's needs and how they can partner up together, because we have funds that perhaps could help them with forest management. So, no, more than willing and open. My only concern, I just don't want this Act 90 to be forever open. At some point in time, I think we too need to find some path that says, okay, we're not going to be carving out more and more. But I am more than willing to look at these 17 that Nicole gave to us and look at them with our staff long and hard. Can we work something out that is mutually beneficial to the current, lessees as well as DLNR? So now I would commit to doing that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Additional questions? I have a couple of questions. The money asks for surveys, appraisals, and the 2 FTEs for review and process transfers. Is that an ask for Department of Agriculture only? Or is it for both Ag and DLNR?
I think it's primarily for Department of Ag, because I'm looking over at my land division.
So forestry handles.
Come on up, why don't you come on up so they can. They are the more of the experts than I am. So, Kevin, if you could introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, Kevin Moore. I'm assistant administrator with the land division. So I was just going to try to deflect to Forestry, because they're the ones who are handling the surveys for easements and things like that.
Okay, so I'm going to bring up, oh, David, you're here too. So David Smith is our administrator of our Division of Forestry. What kinds of resources, like surveys?
Okay, what was the question? Just resources for
Well, there was
enacting
a
the
slide
transfers?
in the presentation that asks for additional capacity. And they
Capacity.
brought up the appraisals, surveys, and people to review and process these transfers. And I just wanted clarification, is that an ask for both departments or just one?
Yeah, we would like funds to do a lot of the surveys. So the transfer just for Kapapala, the cost right now, I'm just looking at it right now, it's about $275,000 just to do the surveys.
200.
I thought it was 28,000.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. So.
Excuse me, it's a
a
$250,000
Yeah.
for a
Quarter
survey?
of a million?
Yes. That's what it just came out at. So that's a pretty significant chunk to be like just coming out of our operating budget, so that's one of the leases.
Sorry, Nicole, you want to add something?
Is it possible, because I think we've spoken about it before, this survey doesn't have to be within inches of being specific? Could it be a little bit broader and then not cost as much?
That's what's required by survey office, and we're just going by survey office requirements. I agree with you that, I agree with you, but
Well,
I don't make the
plan
rules.
division, because we have to prepare a meets and bounds map that gets attached to the executive order. So is there, Kevin, could you come up with, is there anything less? At a minimum, what do we need to attach to the EO? I'm sorry, I misspoke, I put 27,000. I had no idea it was 250,000. 270,000? 270?
I don't know exactly. Some 250.
I don't know of a way to avoid a legal description to put in the executive order. Yeah.
Would you be able to share a copy of that estimate with us?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That would be very helpful. That makes a big difference.
Oh my gosh. No wonder it was 27. I thought, oh, okay, maybe we can, but 250,000, that's a lot. Okay?
Yes.
Thank you.
And then I think my larger, broader ask, right, is, in order to implement Act 90, I think it sounds like from today, there's still work that needs to be done. And so we want to make sure the departments have the resources that they need so they can make those informed decisions and, check off all the boxes for the EO and make sure that the paperwork keeps moving, right? So if you maybe could go back to DLNR and DOA and provide to the committees in writing your asks for dollar amounts, positions, that would be very helpful for us. And I would assume that none of that is part of the executive budget request at this time? Okay, that's great. No.
Thank you for that.
Thank you for
We will-
clarifying.
We will do that. We did get funding last year, but I wanted to point out that Act 90, in the very preamble of Act 90, it says the Department of Agriculture is eligible to ask for the positions. Now, early on, Don and I agreed that we would take no positions from DLNR to implement Act 90. If we needed any positions, we would come to you.
Understand.
So, if you recall, right, it says we can have positions as well. We said, no, we won't take that, so.
Got
I
it.
will be definitely sending you a written memo on what we need, given what the survey costs.
Thank you. That would be very much appreciated. And I think, big picture, Chair Chang, I appreciate your commitment today to continue to talk to the 17 leaseholders. Thank you, Rep. Kahaloa, for that question. I think that's really important. I am troubled to hear that these lands that are in active agriculture production would be taken out of agriculture and no longer used for food production, given our state's goals for local food production and sustainability. That, to me, is a little bit troubling, but I appreciate your willingness to have that continued discussion and work directly with the leaseholders. So thank you very much for that openness.
And I do want to, we're not early termination. So again, we would look at when is the expiration of their lease? But we're unable to negotiate an extension because they're public auction. So So if we had the ability to do that through a statutory change, that may put us in a better position to negotiate an extension of their lease with a carve-out for the specific forest management areas. But we can take a look at that.
The GLs that are on the list expire in 2031, and the rest are RPs.
So if they're RPs, they could be at any time. Yeah, and then I think my other thought, Chair Chang, for that overall question is, right, I understand that these leases may not be a large amount of acreage, but taking them back into DLNR's portfolio for management, is the department going to have then an additional budget ask for positions or funds to start actively managing these lands? That's something that I would be very interested in for future projections of needs, if that is ultimately going to be the plan.
Okay, I don't think at this time we did budget for that because I think we weren't anticipating getting those back.
Oh, microphone, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, yeah, I don't think we've budgeted that, but I will include that in our, I will respond to your question about what would be our ask when those came back.
Well, thank you very much. And any last comments? Yes. Oh.
Mahalo. Thank you both Chair Chang and Chair Hurd and Nicole for making time today. On behalf of the House Agriculture and Food Systems Committee, I'm pleased to hear about the progress that has been made, given that last year there was a big push that we decided to put on the side because we believed in your ability to collaborate, and I think that you folks have demonstrated that with the recent transfers. I just hope that you folks remain committed to working together in collaboration so that the legislature doesn't have to intervene and that this can remain an administration priority. But I look forward to, again, hearing more updates, and I want to thank our other chairs for putting this info briefing together and all of our members for being here today. So mahalo.
Thank you very much, Chair Tarnas. Any closing remarks? No? Okay. Thank you very much for your time today. This hearing is adjourned.